Right. Hello, everyone. Hello, Self-Publishing Made Simple community. Welcome to our conversations on self-publishing here in Self-Publishing Made Simple. So for today's conversation, we have our very special guest. You've seen her posts in our community. You've seen her journey to get the number one bestseller on Amazon. I'm really super proud of what she's achieved. She's now, yeah, we can now call her number one international best-selling author and self-publishing made simple alumni. And we're here to talk about her journey to get the number one bestseller, the self-publishing journey and what she learned and what lessons she can share with you as members of our community. So without further ado, let's all welcome Tawnie Breaux. Hi, Tawnie. Thanks for being here.
Well, thank you. I'm happy to be here, Emmy. I'm excited to
I'm
talk.
very excited because you're actually you are the first person to be interviewed really inside the community. We were supposed to have the Kindlepreneur guy, but he moved a couple of weeks later. So you're the first one to be interviewed. I'm really excited to hear about the lessons that you learned in your self-publishing journey. You were absolutely successful. You smashed it in your launch. I know it wasn't easy, but you actually got there. So for those people who don't know anything about your, or if they haven't seen your book around, tell us a little bit about yourself and what's your book about.
Okay, thank you. I'm definitely happy to be here. So I appreciate you having me on. My name is Tawnie Breaux, and I wrote a book called Women in Power. And I have been in a very male-dominated industry for a very long time, and it was just those little secrets and tips to gaining confidence and building credibility quickly. And I am not a writer by nature. And so it definitely was a journey and a process for me to, get from point A to the end of the process.
Yes, I actually hear that a lot from authors. They would say something like, I'm not naturally a writer, but they end up writing a book, which is absolutely amazing. So, how did that work if you didn't really identify yourself as a writer? How did you manage to write a book?
Well, you really helped me get through the process. So, and people that have come up and asked me recently, it is a process. So, yeah, in my head, I've always journaled, I've always written things for content or work or things, but just sitting down and blocking off time to write something that I was going to publish was an entirely new concept for me. And I do have a day job and I have, projects that I work on. So for me, time management was a big deal. And blocking off a section of time just dedicated to writing was really important because it was always the first thing that tended to drop off my list as I got busy and as things were coming at me. I'll get to it later. I'll do it later. And so really just sitting down and making time to get through the process and that encouraging little nudge that I would get from you every once in a while, or someone that I had told, hey, I'm working on a book, just to have that accountability. They'll ask you and you'll be like, oh
I
yeah, I
have to
am
do
doing that.
that.
I see that.
I said I will do that. Yes,
And so
I know. I hope you didn't mind. It's like, honey, hello, how's it going?
but you know what? Sometimes you need that. You need a little encouragement just to get, okay, yes, I'm going to do this. And little by little, it would come. And it was the excitement of others that got me through it too. If I'd let someone read what I was working on and it seemed to resonate, I was like, okay, I'm on to something. And then I would keep going. So the writing process itself, to me, it was kind of cathartic. I would sit down and I would get through it, and I couldn't write for really long periods of time. It really had to be when I felt like writing and the timing was right, and I would sit down and I would complete, a few pages or a chapter, and then my mind would be working in overdrive, and I'd say I have to step away from this, and then I'd step away, and then. But I always felt so accomplished as I got something done today, like for my book that I felt proud about. So I was excited.
In terms of the time, how much time did you end up spending in terms of the writing process? I know you have the writing process, and then you have the self-publishing process, process which actually takes a little bit more time. But in terms of the writing, how much time did you end up spending?
Um, it is really hard to say because I would block off like 3 or 4 hours a week,
Mm.
just in my day. And sometimes I would get to it, sometimes I wouldn't. And then sometimes on the weekend, I would just find myself, spending a couple hours on this.
Because you have
So,
it, yeah.
so from probably 8 months, really, it took me to get to the point where I said, okay, I have it drafted. I'm ready to edit or review.
Yeah. And I think that's probably what separates those authors who just go with the flow. It might take them longer. It will get them there, but because you've been consciously blocking time in your diary, and spending that time to actually write your book, sit down and put some words on the page, it
Mhm.
helps you to keep up the momentum, and keeping the book within your radar. I know that you are a very busy person. You have projects, and you have a podcast, and you have a blog as well, don't you? So you are busy, but finding the time, allocating the time. Sometimes you get to it, sometimes you don't, but eventually, because you have those block time in your diary, you eventually got the draft done. So 8 months, how did you feel when you finally felt, okay, I have a draft? Did you feel like you can let it go? Did you feel as if, oh, it's not ready yet? What was it like? How did you know that it was sort of ready?
I don't ever think I feel like it's finished, to tell you the truth. I had to finally just let it go, because if I kept going back to it and going back to it, I would have never published it in the first place. But I felt like, I was wanting to hit a certain amount of word count, but I was also trying to make sure that I covered enough content, that was useful. So I kind of teetered between that. I wasn't going out to write the biggest book or the longest book or the, most information in one book, but I felt like it was complete. And then I went through the editing process, and then that kind of sent me back to the beginning, because I would reread something and then think about it and then rewrite it a little bit. So that the drafting process took a while too. And then I finally had to let it go. And I also did hire an editor,
Mm.
off of Upwork was the site that I used. And so I had someone else's eyes on it, because once you look at it a million times, it
You
just,
couldn't notice it anymore.
yeah, I couldn't. And so I had some good editors helping me just go through it. And then I had my advanced reading group. And to tell you the truth, I did a couple drafts even after the advanced reading group got back with me with their suggestions. But it was really the encouragement of my advanced reading group that, like, fueled me,
It's there.
yeah,
Yeah.
to get it done. Because you always question, like, oh, is this meaningful for someone? Is this going to really help someone? And the excitement that I got back from my reading group, it I was like, okay, so you guys really like this?
I can't
Okay, so
believe it.
the reaction I got was like, this is good. And I was like, yeah, you're just telling me that. You're my friend. And they're like, no.
I can sense imposter syndrome there.
I was like, you have to be nice to me. And then I got some people that weren't necessarily like super close to me getting feedback that was positive. So it encouraged me. Okay, then let's go. I'm setting my date, and that's what I had to do for myself. Was just, hey, this is the date it's going to be done by. And I had some out of town meetings, and I was traveling, and during the time on my off time, I was getting things done still, because I had that target in my
You
mind that
have
I
that target date. You had that date in mind, and you just have to go for it. But I guess you have to finish your draft first.
would.
And then when you go through that self-publishing process where you have your advanced reader, your editor, your launch team, when you set your launch date, you just you just work through the motions. Really, it's like it's there. I have the material, I just need to package it and get it done. And what I've noticed, even with my current clients, I see this over and over again. They will write something, or it may be something that they've written several months ago already, but they just keep going through this editing process over and over again because they feel as if it's just not ready, it's not complete. But I would say, just give it to someone to read it. Give it to your advanced readers. Give it to your editor. Because when you have that external person looking at your work and you are getting the feedback that actually it's already good, you might need a couple of tweaks here and there, some suggestions here and there. But essentially, when someone tells you, yeah, you got something good there, I think this is pretty much ready, here are just some minor suggestions to to include in your revisions, and it just gives you the confidence, actually, that extra boost, that yeah, I think it's time.
Mhm. And the perfectionist comes out. I mean, I pick it up today and like, oh, I could expand here. I could have, you still do that in your head. So
Yeah.
you really have to kind of let it go and just be perfectly imperfect in some way.
Yeah. And
You're just, you're going to find things, or you're going to think about things later, but I'm, you just have to really be okay with putting yourself out there and kind of being vulnerable, right? To like, there's your work. So, you're going to have critiques and critics or people saying things. So you just have to kind of have that,
have the courage.
be okay. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
And to be honest with you, Tawnie, with the self-publishing, particularly on Amazon, I feel more comfortable putting it out there, because if I need to update it, you can actually update it, and within 4 hours it's
Mm-hmm.
updated. So you can update it every 6 months, every year, whatever you feel comfortable with. When
Mm-hmm.
you start getting feedback from your reviewers, from your readers, actually, from strangers buying it from Amazon, you can update it, or maybe even use the feedback that you're getting for your next book, for the series. So until you actually get your book out there, you will never know how people are going to receive it. You know what's in your head, you know how you're judging yourself, but until you actually get it out there and share it with other people, then you'll never know how people are going to receive it.
Yes, absolutely. I completely agree with that. And the Amazon publishing process, it does let you upload and go back and make some of those changes easily. And that's, to me, peace of mind. Because when I found a couple of those, I was like, oh, this needs to be fixed. And so I could easily go in and no one ever knows. I mean, and if they have my very first original, then they have that. But
First
it's
edition.
first edition. But I agree with that. It is an easier way to publish and know that you can go back and update. I completely agree with that.
Yeah, I mean, for me, I'm also still traditionally published, and it takes us 3 to 4 years, to update another edition. Whereas with self-publishing, you have more control, and if you need to update it and have some minor revisions, you can always go back, and within 4 hours, it's ready. But Tony, in terms of the self-publishing process, was there anything that you found surprising in the process, or were there specific things in the process that you found more difficult than others?
Sure. So one thing that you really have to get your head wrapped around is the whole thing with the keyword searches and the categories. And you don't really understand until you go through the process. So I know it comes at the beginning of the conversation and the beginning of the class, but it's not an easy concept to understand until you actually publish, and then you start seeing, okay, how important keywords are in searches and also categories, especially if your goal is to be a #1 bestseller quickly. That little algorithm or loophole or however we get there very quickly is amazing, and it may not always be there for us, but it is very important to understand, how you're going to push your book out there and what keywords that you're going to associate with it.
Yeah, so it actually did take us a bit of time, with your title and subtitle. I know that we went back and forth with that, because of the keywords, what's actually um what resonates with your audience as well. But doing your keyword research, identifying the high traffic, low competition keywords is really important if you want your book to be found. Because if you're okay, it's nice to be creative with your title, but if people couldn't find your book because when they put it on, they never think of that title because you're the only one who thought of that title. So having that the keyword research, to identify keywords for the title, the subtitle, even in your book description, it really does help in terms of the algorithm and the searchability of your book on Amazon. In terms of your launch, yeah, was there anything that surprised you? Was there something that, oh, this was more difficult, oh, I didn't realize that this is so easy? Is there anything that particularly surprised you?
I guess the one of the surprising things was how many downloads happened with some of the promoters and how quickly they happened. So when you first have the ability to launch and you have those days where your book could be free and you use those promoters in the right way, I was really surprised how well they did.
How many downloads did you have in your first couple of days? Did you reach several hundreds?
Thousands.
Thousands. Amazing. Yeah,
Yeah.
I think you managed to get into the top 100, at some point in the entire Amazon store. I mean, there are like millions of books on Amazon, and to be in the top 100, it's absolutely amazing.
Yeah, I was really surprised at how well it did. And then the promoting that you can do after that, my promotions just ran down. Like I went through a whole stage of them, and I may think about doing more in the future. I'm not really sure how that's going to work, but I'm really happy with where it's at and how I launched it. And I had no idea how to launch a book. I had no idea how to use any of the tools or how to go find them. All the resources that were available to me were so helpful in being so successful. I mean, I can't thank you enough for the guidance because I was very clueless. I would have just put it out there and then just gone on my
Cross
merry.
your fingers.
Exactly.
Yeah. Well, to be honest with you, because I'm a traditional author with a traditional publisher, all I had to do in the past was write my book and then give it to my publisher. But when I decided to self-publish my books, I needed to learn how to promote my books and how to launch it, because the last thing I'd want is to write something and nobody reads it. That's really my worst nightmare. So I had to educate myself and learn how to do it. And when I've tested it 3 times with my books, I found out, okay, this one works. I think it's time to share it now. And I'm glad that that helped you, and to see the results that you got. I'm absolutely super proud and super happy. It took about a year. I think we had the conversation, on your podcast probably a year ago, maybe more than a year ago, and planting the seeds of, oh, write a book, and you start, and start probing you, Tawnie, where's your book? How's it going? And to see it finally published and reach number one bestseller is absolutely amazing. And by the way, I love your cover. That cover is stunning. I mean, it's a professional headshot, and your initial covers were uh you did them yourself initially. What
Mhm.
made you change your mind to get a professional cover designer instead?
The reaction from people in the groups, and then also, I mean, I thought they were nice. They were not done. I had some software that I used, but I kept coming back to, if I'm gonna do this, let's go
Do
ahead
it
and do
right.
it. So I used the 99 designs, and that was one of the hardest choices right there. I had so many
Choices.
amazing options and choice, and and to this day I love them all.
Mm.
And if it was just up to me, I may have picked a different cover. But what I did was I polled my audience and I polled my readers and I put a couple designs out, and probably some of you listening helped me with that. And it came back that the one that always had it always tracked higher than all the others. And I loved it too. Don't get me wrong, I loved it too. But it always tracked higher. And so that's the one that I ended up going with. And I did do that with my subtitle, and also with, the cover design and the title. I kind of had the title that I knew I wanted women in power. Like, that's what I wanted.
Yeah.
As for the subtitle, I mean, I had so many options. I used the software to give me ideas. I had different option ideas. And again, until you go through the process and then you look back at the process and where you're at, you don't, all the advice you get is amazing, but you have this idea of what you want to be in your head, and sometimes you have to let go of that a little bit to get the best results for all of your hard work. But I was really happy with it in the end.
I'm glad. Well, it was it was quite a process, a lot of toing and froing. And actually, if I'm guessing, if you didn't go through the self-publishing made simple process, you might have just published it, cross your fingers, and hope for the best. I'm guessing you might still poll your covers, as a business person yourself, the importance of, talking to your audience, talking to your readers and asking for feedback. But it's really important to follow the sequence, because the sequence, if you don't know the sequence, it's likely that you will publish something, you'll ask your family and friends to download it, and you'll get several dozen downloads, but that's about it. But when you go through the sequence, especially if you know keyword research, search engine optimization on Amazon, the promos,
Mhm.
and getting a professional cover, I think was really important. And you mentioned something about the subtitle. You used the software. Did you use the title generator or something, like throwing you some ideas?
Yes, hours. Clicking next. Okay, those are good. And coming up with some, liking some, not liking some just didn't make sense. Some were, you know, what
Way
resonates.
off.
Yeah, they were just so off. But I needed help with that. I wasn't creative enough just to sit down with a blank piece of paper and come up with 10 titles on my own that resonated. So I did use tools for, I knew what I wanted, right? But then I used tools to guide it and to get
Yeah,
more.
to help you to generate some ideas. Ultimately, what I would say is, yes, use these tools to support you through the process, generate some ideas. Especially, these are templates that have been proven to work in some books, or maybe even blogs that go viral. But ultimately, you still have to go with your heart, like what feels right, what, with your gut, what you actually can see would work. Ask your audience, ask your readers what actually resonates with them, and then you just go for it. And I'm so glad that you finally did it. You have your book out there, and it's wonderful that you've done so well, and that you're happy with the process. So are you thinking of writing more? Is there book 2, book 3, and book 4 in the series? What are your plans now? What are the next steps?
That's a really good question. Getting through the process was my first step. Just okay, it's done now. And now sharing it is a big. I'm in a lot of women entrepreneurial networking events and associations. So I'm kind of sharing the story, sharing the word. And so really just sharing this book right now is my big
Yeah.
focus.
Bring copies of your book wherever you go to speak. It's wonderful to be able to say, look, I'm an international number one international best-selling author. Here's my book. Feel free to read it. And are you using your book as well to grow your mailing list? Is this part of your branding strategy and marketing strategy for your business?
Um, yes, I am using it kind of in that way as well. I do a lot of when I do trainings now, have something to offer more than just the topics that I cover, with having the book as a supplement, and really just sharing it. I am. Books, Beauty, and Business is the podcast and the blog that I do. So I obviously feature it on there as well, but I also feature a lot of authors and a lot of different books and writers. So I'm still kind of trying to figure out how to best incorporate that book, but it's definitely part of my brand now. And as far as the next book, I've been asked that a couple times. I don't have a plan right now. I'm not saying that I won't write another book. I'm just enjoying finishing this book and just having it out there right now.
Yes, yes, absolutely. Enjoy. It's a wonderful feeling. It took you quite a while, to get here. Now it's time to enjoy it and share it as widely as you can. So Tony, if there's anything that you want to say to those who are in the middle of writing a book, or maybe thinking about writing a book, but they're absolutely scared and clueless about the self-publishing process, what advice would you share with them?
I just give them your information. Seriously, I've been asked this several times, and people will come up and say, I have an idea for a book, or I'm writing a book, or I have written a book, I have no idea how to publish it. And I'm just like, go talk to Emee, because she's going to tell you exactly what to do. The class was so helpful. And I can obviously help someone and guide them through with what I have now learned. But I really think having taken a class like yours and having it all lined up and going through the motion, and then having your assistance and your encouragement, I couldn't have done it any other way. So, but I do encourage you, if you have an idea or a story or something you're passionate about, write it. There's no reason not to. It's the process is, it takes time, it takes persistence, but it's not difficult. It's not a hard process. It's just like anything that we do, you have to stick at it until you get to the end of the process. And it's completely worth it. It really is. Just to put yourself out there, to put your ideas and your thoughts and your stories, and then to get that feedback and to help someone else, or, give them a tool to use like this. I think it's definitely worth it, and everybody should write a book.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. And I mean, I guess because you also have that sense of purpose, you have a message to share, and that's really driving you forward. It's not just about you writing a book anymore, but it's also about sharing something that that other people will benefit from. And when you have your readers in mind, knowing that what you have to share is worth sharing, that will just power you through, and it will get you to finish your book. Lots of grit and determination needed. It's
Yes.
not, it takes some resilience and dedication to actually get it done. But all the elements, you got it. You had your sense of purpose, you had the time management, which is really important, especially if you're like juggling projects around, and also that, I guess, that guidance, and I'm glad to be able to to be part of your process, because having to follow a structured plan, step by step, so you don't actually feel overwhelmed about the process, giving you tips on what you can do about cover design or editing or promos and so on. Just having that structure makes it seem less daunting and more manageable, and I'm so happy that I got to be part of your journey.
Yes, thank you.
Well, everyone, so if you're thinking about writing your book, if you're scared, don't know what to do, learn from this conversation, learn from the lessons from Tony, and I'm sure that if you have that sense of purpose as well, if you have a message that you would like to share, go for it. Even if you are not, should we say, an experienced writer, just write a couple of words on the page. It is the editor's job, you know, to tidy it up for you. I mean, for me, English is not my first language. I think that's one of my limiting beliefs. Like, I can't really write very well in English, but that's absolutely fine. The editor is going to fix it. So, just get writing. And if you need any guidance or support, we're here. The Self-Publishing Made Simple community is a very friendly community. And as you can see, we have experienced authors already that you can ask for advice, and and guidance, and we'll just be here to support you. So that's it, everyone. Thank you very much for joining us, and we'll catch up again next time for another conversation here in Self Publishing Made Simple. Until then, take care and bye for now. Bye.